Welcome to the MMHP in the 989, channeling all styles and eras of Michigan music history. Recorded live from the Michigan Rock Legends Hall of Fame, located inside the Bay County Historical Museum
from the city by the bay.
Featuring Dr. J, Fred Reif, Mr. Mike, and your host, Scott Baker. Brought to you by the 989 Podcast Network and the Michigan Rock Legends Hall of Fame, located at the Bay County Historical Society Museum at 321 Washington Avenue, Bay City, Michigan.
Hey, welcome everybody. We're podcasting tonight again from the Michigan Rock and Roll Legends Hall of Fame, located at the Historical Museum of Bay County in beautiful Bay City, Michigan. And our guest tonight, Andy Reid.
Ooh, hey, Andy.
Hello. Hi, guys. How's it going?
Oh, we're doing good. It's a hot, muggy, thick summer day here.
It is. But just remember, it's not snowing, so we can't complain. We cannot complain.
True. And it's going to get hotter next week, so we may appreciate today.
I just heard that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
We got Dr. J in the house. Dr. J's been revamping up here the Michigan Rock Legends Hall of Fame. I think we could run a little update on that since we haven't really done any speaking. I know it's going to run later, but you're changing a few things around, right?
Well, right. I showed Andy, I guess the latest additions are the three inductees from the Upper Peninsula, the Riot Squad, the Excels, and the Galaxies. We have a display of their memorabilia, but really proud of the posters that we've got, original posters from some of our inductees, primarily Gary Grimshaw. And we've got 8 beautiful Grimshaw posters down there. One of a concert that our buddy Fred here was involved in, and that was the Blues Festival. Fred, remind me, which poster were you directly involved in?
1973 Ann Arbor Blues and Jazz Fest.
There we go.
Even though on that poster they don't have my show, but that must be a earlier poster or something.
Probably, yeah. Maybe
because
it was
I have a poster
everything
where
was
my
set up.
show is on it.
Okay. All right.
A Sharpie can change that.
Maybe I can put a sign underneath and say, Fred Reif was here.
But I also was involved in that other one, 90-something Gary Grimshaw Ann Arbor Blues and Jazz Fest.
Okay.
I was on the board for that, and I have that poster, but I didn't realize Gary Grimshaw did it.
Okay.
Sir Fred speaking here.
Yeah.
Till you told me.
You been writing the book more, or you're getting closer, or where are we at with that?
I have. As a matter of fact, I just yesterday got a clue on Tejano music. My friend Ziggy gave me his guitar repairman, said he's been in Tejano music from locally around here all his life. His parents had a band. So I called him, but I'm waiting for him to call back.
Okay. Well, that's a good lead.
Yeah, well, maybe he was involved in some of those shows at the GI Forum in Saginaw.
Right.
That's where all the big name Tejano artists
Right.
came during the 60s and 70s.
Mr.
Well, actually,
Mike
I
in the
want it
house.
to end sort of around 1970.
Yeah.
So the history
That's where your
of it-
book's going to end?
Sort of. Because
Yeah, well, work in progress.
Tri-City Records didn't start until 1969. And that included all the R&B people, or most of them, from Saginaw and Flint. So I want to include that because I have a lot of information.
Well, this is turning into real cool thing. I'm glad you held out for this past year, revamping your idea and digging up more stuff. I mean, you are out there looking for...
Well, I looked at the book yesterday, or what I have written already, and I don't know if I'm going to cut out the rock and roll stuff.
Don't. We can always use that stuff.
Well, I have over 350 pages, and I got to get it down to 200 and some pages.
That's a good update. We haven't talked to you about that since earlier this year.
Well, I haven't done anything until now.
How you doing, Mr. Mike?
I'm doing good.
Good. What you been up to?
The usual.
Yeah.
Out almost every night. And
We got Mike's butt to sit on the main stage down at the MC5 tribute to the night. Gary and myself and Mike went down.
Wow.
And Mike saw I was going to make a run to the front row to give a card to somebody, and little did I know he was hanging onto my shirt tail. He said, "Thank you." And he said, "I'm staying right here." And so he got off his seat and he stayed right on the stage the rest of the night. And he videotaped it. So we went down, the three of us, and got to catch with my buddy Dan, and got to get the MC5 tribute going. And we sure got the Michigan music history and the rock and roll legends word out for Gary and us. So it was a huge evening to go down there. And
it was cool.
We're about to break ground with some artists, I'm sure. A lot of the night was with Kenny Olson, former Kid Rock guitar player that does his own thing now, building a studio in Dearborn. And he's already invited us down.
It was really fun seeing him play. He was great.
Yeah.
So what is it, a stand-up place still? Or?
There are a couple seats. We got there early enough that we commandeered a couple stools. Not the most comfortable seat, for being there for about 6 hours.
The stage was a lot more comfortable.
Was it?
That's right.
My back support was the monitor.
Well, there you go. There you go. Andy Reid, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well. Hanging in there.
This is a podcast that we spoke about amongst ourselves in the first season before Mike even got on, like some throwing around ideas of authors and studio production as well as artists and everything, under the sun. And I says, well, the cool thing about having Andy is maybe he can help, or we can get, and then invite Andy as a surprise, your buddy in Ann Arbor, or in Lansing there. But have you heard anything from him?
I haven't heard anything back from Glenn. No, I owe him a phone call, though.
Glenn Brown.
I owe him a phone call. So he's a busy guy. He definitely has, his stock has increased since the Billy Strings Grammy win, which it should. Glenn's always been great. And but I know he's got a bunch of projects, and he's building consoles and all kinds of stuff. So I feel like I'm really busy, and I know he's like twice as busy as I am. So, but I do owe him a phone call. I did send him an email and all that stuff. So I'll get him. Yeah. I'll get him.
We were going to surprise you with it if we could land it, but he just never replied back. And then Andy says, "Hey, the other day to me, let's do the show." I'm like, "We can. Can you maybe help get him on the show?"
Yeah. Oh yeah. No,
we didn't need anybody else. We've got.
No.
You know what I'll do is I'll get Donnie. Donnie Brown's good friends with Glenn too. It's like we'll just double team him and just like drag his butt here.
No, he can drag his ass here.
Yeah, you can say
it.
it.
Sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But no, dude, you got your own stories, a million of them. I'm glad things kind of went the way they did because your stock opened up threefold over the last 3-4 years as well. Yeah. And here we are, man. So where did it all start for you?
Yeah, that's where I'm real curious about. Where did Andy Reid? Where did you get started, and where did you develop that love for '60s style guitar-based music? So take us back. How did this go?
Well, I feel like it kind of started in high school, like around 14, 15. I was at the time CD players were a new thing. Remember around, this is probably early 90s, 91, 92.
Right. I think that's when I got my first CD player.
And you could go, I didn't have any money. I was 14 years old, but you can go rent CDs from the library, remember, and just check them out.
Of course.
So I was just like, I'm going to check out some of these Beatles CDs and see how this hits me. Because no one was listening to the Beatles at that time that I knew of because that was like their dad's music. You know what I mean? It was not cool at that time to like the Beatles and the Beach Boys and stuff. And then it just instantly connected with me. I wasn't a musician yet, okay? I had played a little bit of piano, when I was younger, but I hadn't picked up guitar or anything like that. So just developed this love for 60s and 70s music. And at the same time, I developed this love for like 90s stuff because that was my generation's music, the Nirvana, Soundgarden, and that whole thing. So I have this, hard, angsty, grunge music on one side, and then I have this beautiful melodic guitar pop, and I just loved all of it. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, I guess you can't pin me down and I'm the same way. It's like I just love all genres of music. I just absolutely am. I can't find enough new music to listen to. I really can't, and I'm just a fan first. So around when I was 18, my cousin Dan Koju, who Scott's good buddies with, used to be in a band called Acoustic Fields, and they were original band from this area. Brian Coonan, Josh Dingman, Matt Rothfuss, and Dan Koju. Danny was the drummer. And they were writing their own songs. They were going to recording studios. They were playing bars, and I used to sneak into the bars with them and run sound for them. You know, I didn't know what I was doing, but I just wanted to be around it because I loved it. So that basically led to me. I ended up going to Ferris State University for golf pro management. I was an avid golfer in high school, really? So that was kind of my thing. And I mean, I was a poor student, so it's like I gotta do something. That's the only thing I was really good at. So I guess I'm going to Ferris. Well, that lasted a semester, and I had about $130 left in student loan money, and I went to Herder and bought an acoustic guitar. so that got me into the guitar, and I just never set it down. So I was 18 years old, started by just learning a bunch of Beatles songs. And then when you really start out, the best part about guitar is like if you can't play other songs, you can just make up your own. And that got me into songwriting, you know, it's just like that. And then, you know, over the years, I developed a little bit of a style, and I love like Weezer was a great breakthrough band for me because they were like a nice combination of that hard rock stuff that I liked, but with the Beatles, Beach Boy melodic thing, harmonies and stuff. So that really grabbed me, and I'm just like, well, I want to do that. And so I just started writing songs, and I told my brother to go buy a bass guitar, and he obliged, and we worked it out with our friend Todd McMahon, and we started a band called the Haskels, and that was around. I was 21 years old, so that was around.
I got to interject here. The name the Haskels.
Yeah.
Whenever at least anybody of my generation hears the name Haskell, they think of Eddie Haskell.
That's exactly why. He was kind of that snarky, smart ass, like. That's right. And it kind of suited our whole concept of what we wanted to do. You know, it's like, we wear the shirt and ties, and then we're out there just sweating and throwing our instruments around, and it was like. It was so much fun, and just I learned a ton and met so many great people at the time, and we were green, holy cow, you know, but there was this youthful energy and excitement to all of it that I look back fondly on. And we got to we were talking about Chad Cunningham earlier. We were just kind of playing around the area. And Chad had approached us from Bullfrog Records, and he had he had Lucid Jones at the time, and he had Bobby at the time.
Right? Was the Robert Lee band.
Those were the two. Yeah. So he's like, hey, I want to get a Bay City band to kind of like, you know, tack on and kind of work with and stuff. So he was great, and we were like, oh wow, someone likes us enough to like give us money to make a record. So we talked him into letting us go to Detroit. There was this guy named Brendan Benson. Now, nobody knew who Brendan was at the time. Brendan had an album come out in '96 on Virgin called One Mississippi. And myself, my brother, and maybe 4,000 other people knew about this guy. Well, some friends of mine in a band called the Atomic Numbers. You got to remember around this time, this is like late 90s. So I was just engulfed in Michigan music. We had the Verve Pipe that was blowing up. We had 19 Wheels. We had kind of the start of the White Stripes was kind of coming on in the Atomic Numbers. And there was a great, great Michigan music scene. And there always has been, you know, but I just loved Michigan music. So as I started this band, I'm driving to Grand Rapids to go to the intersection to watch 4 original bands on Fridays and Saturday nights just to kind of take it all in and enjoy it, because I was a fan more of Michigan bands than I was of like national bands at the time. So made a lot of great friends, you know, that I still am friends with. And so he let us go record with Brendan, and Brendan he lived on East Grand Boulevard, about a mile down from the Motown Museum. Okay. This old, you know, that neighborhood is hit or miss, block to block kind of thing. He's like, pull around back, you know, and he's got bars on the windows and stuff like that. And inside this old mansion of his on East Grand Boulevard, he had this analog recording studio. He had tape machines. He had vintage microphones. He had tons of guitars. And I'm like, oh, this is the fun part. Yeah. And ever since then, it's like, okay, I had the recording bug.
How did you get with him to get him to co-produce and engineer your album?
So what had happened is my friends from the Atomic Numbers, they did a song for a Who tribute record, and they recorded it at Brendan's. And they're like, we were asking them, who should we call? Because we knew about Dave Feeney at the Temper Mill. And he's like, man, we just did this song with Brendan. You guys would love Brendan. He's awesome. I'm like, I already do love Brendan. And this is back in the day. It's like, okay, well, how do we get a hold of him? And you grab the phone book and look in Detroit, and it's like Brendan Benson. And then the 9-digit number's right there. So we just called him and said, hey, we're a band from Bay City. We're super 60s and 70s influenced. Would you want to record us? And we'll pay. We have a label giving us a little bit of money. And he's like, I'll do it for $225 a song. And that was it.
Wow.
And that was like, I mean, for back then, that is disgustingly cheap. Because if you wanted to go into a studio in the late 90s, they were all $75 an hour to $100 an hour kind of thing, before it kind of came back down. Sadly, now that I'm in the studio business, the prices went down. So,
Right.
So we met up with him, and he was great, and he taught us a ton. And I remember the most one of the greatest moments was he was making his record Lapelco at the time, which is an outstanding record. And we had just got done recording for the day. We're thinking, yeah, we're awesome. This is great. And Brendan puts a reel of his stuff on. I'm like, man, we got a long way to go, But it was just such a great learning experience. And it was just like, I was like such a sponge back then. And it still am.
It turned out to be such a good album, though.
Thanks.
I think you realize your goal of really, without just aping bands from the 60s, like the Beatles or the Beach Boys, your music enhance, or it brought that out without ever really kind of copying it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that was definitely the intention. It's like, there are so many great bands that wear those influences on their sleeve. Fountains of Wayne's another great example. And we just wanted to do that. We wanted to do our own thing. And, Cheap Trick was a gigantic influence at that time for us, too, especially live. But the nice part was Brendan really showed us how to do that, because Brendan was that guy. Like, he was a Beatles guy and a McCartney guy. So he was able to say, like, okay, if you really want to make this sound like the 60s, do this or do that, that kind of thing. So he was a great mentor and teacher, as well as like directing us in how to make a record, So it was, but he still didn't like completely change who we were. We were still able to be ourselves and play our parts. He just kind of sculpted it a little bit. And that was just great for me moving on and eventually doing what I do. It was just like, that was one of my first big lessons,
What kind of reaction did the album get, back in the day?
It was great. I mean, we had it was such a different time. I mean, this is, we're talking 25 years ago. Oh my gosh, it's 25 years ago.
Yeah, that's when we both started out.
Yeah. So it was great. We were playing a lot live, so it was great
You had a lot of gigs, and you had a lot of you cornered the pop market very well. You guys had a lot of access to it. Whereas I was coming out of just something local, trying to figure it out, coming out of the Dick Wagner thing, which is a whole other scene. But
you were in the jam band.
I was in the jam band thing where there was
worlds.
Sprout, Gut Bucket, and us, Muddy Gumbo. Andy was always on the road playing, and we're like, how does he get? Maybe we need to go pop and do that, But you were also the first guys around town to use in-ears and all sorts of stuff too.
Yeah, and that was the thing though, is that back then it was about show swaps, So it's like we would bring the 19 Wheels from Lansing here to play at the Hamilton Street Pub, and then they'd take us to Rick's American Cafe in Lansing, and we were just like, sharing fan bases, and that was how it worked.
Is that how you met the Numbers too?
Yeah, Atomic Numbers the same exact way.
I wondered how you met those.
Yeah, it was just seeing them live one night, opening for somebody, and just saying, "Hey, I got this band." It's like we love what you're doing, and we fit great, and yeah. Then we do shows in like Mount Pleasant at Rubbles together, and it was just this big, nice, great community of like pop rock acts that were just really great live bands, and we learned. And these guys were all seasoned, by the way. And we were kind of the young pups on the block, so it's just learned so much about just like stage presence, how we sound on stage, the in-ears thing. We were all about vocals.
Yeah.
And we're just like, we can't hear ourselves very well, so let's try this new in-ear monitor thing. And that helped us get better vocal blends and stuff live. And just, this is all just new technology at the time. Mm-hmm. So that whole time was just fun and just meeting lifelong friends and supporting other acts. And it's amazing to see, like, when I record newer, younger bands now, it's like they're doing the same thing, and it just makes me so happy. I'm like, you guys don't know how much fun it is right now,
Right.
Back when I was your age.
Yeah,
No,
there we go.
but the album itself did really well for us. We got
Go
some
ahead.
college radio markets. That was nice. Chad kind of pushed that. Got some opening gigs for some, Cheap Trick here in Bay City, which was great. Through Chad, but yeah, it was just it did well for us, and it was a good representation of who we were at the time, and it's nice to have a great recording, and then you give it to other bands and stuff too, and that's how you get more gigs and
Right.
get into more places.
Did you guys release a single from the album?
We never did the single thing. No, it was always just the record was that it is what it was. I think that Song of Hope was the one that, when the press release went out to the college radio, that you always circle like 3 songs on the thing, and we just put like numbered them 1, 2, and 3. Mm-hmm. I think that was the first one. That's one that got most airplay. And like I said, it was just college radio, so we didn't get any top 40 stuff or anything around like that way. But yeah, it was just, we went to Impact 89 FM in Lansing was our first on-air interview at Michigan State University's radio station. Just, it was so cool. We were just in heaven,
awesome.
living it up.
So, okay, I have to ask you this. What happened to the Haskels? Why wasn't there another CD to, add on to what you'd already accomplished?
Well, we went on, and for a while after that, we added my cousin Danny, who was in acoustic fields, who played guitar. And, just life kind of happened. My brother started a family. So his time was kind of going that way. And I was really starting to develop this, love for recording. So I was mostly just, in the basement with this digital 16-track thing, writing songs and learning how to produce, and that became kind of like my love. And so we just kind of grew out of it a little bit.
Okay.
There was never an official breakup. It was, Todd, same thing. Todd started a family. And yeah, I think it just kind of fizzled out. We played some shows here and there, and the shows just got further and further apart, and I think by 2004, we were kind of just like, I think that was it. And then my brother and I ended up forming a band with 2 guys from the Atomic Numbers called the Rioteers for a couple years, and that was fun. And we made a little EP and, played some great shows around the Detroit area. And yeah, it just kind of, like I said, fizzled out, and then, yeah.
So how do you get, you want to go into record production, recording,
Mm-hmm.
How do you get the word out? How did you go about doing that? Or is it just sort of like you started out with people who knew you and you started working with them? And because, looking at your list of who you recorded with, gee, it seems like you recorded with just about everybody in mid-Michigan. A lot of people that I've known, a lot of groups that I've seen. How do you get started in that when you want to be get your own studio together and so on?
It started very it was a weird thing because I never envisioned it being what it is. In 2005, 2006, my brother and I made this Reed Brothers CD. It was just he and I co-writing some songs, just kind of we weren't playing a ton of live shows. It was more acoustic based, but it was more of that production that I was talking about, adding a bunch of keyboards and just learning how to, steal all the Brian Wilson tricks and stuff like that. Trying to, not saying I was pulling it off, I was trying to pull it off. And it all just started from that CD. Brett Mitchell was kind of the first person to go, hey, Brett Mitchell's a Midland guy, super talented guy. He's
From Gut Bucket Blues Band.
Yeah, from Gut Bucket. Yeah, exactly.
Seen
Yeah.
Brett perform a number of times.
Yeah, he's amazing. So he was just like, "Hey, I love this Reed Brothers CD." He's like, "Would you want to record my solo album?" I'm like, "Yeah," and I'm like, "For money? I mean, what are we doing here? I mean, I'll do it, you know." And it just kind of started with that. Brian Coonan was playing with Mandy Lane and the Lost Highway. That was one of my first people. And at the time, you know, I was playing in Jedi Mind Trip, doing cover gigs. You know, playing bass 5 nights a week, you know, playing Jesse's Girl and Don't Stop Believin' and all that stuff. And I'm like, okay. So I had a couple days during the week I started recording bands. Well, word of mouth. Brett has an album come out. Hey, I heard Brett Mitchell's CD. Would you want to record my band? Sure. I heard Mandy Lane's new CD. Would you record my band? All of a sudden, I'm booked 4 days a week. You know, I'm like, oh, this is turning into a thing. And by the time I knew it, I was working 5-6 days a week, and I didn't have to do the cover band gig anymore.
Oh, okay.
And it all just kind of happened like that. And then
you're working out of your home? Do you have your studio in your house?
Yeah, my studio's in my home, and it always was, and it's just in the same spot as it has been. And
I remember the early days when you were just
I was
getting
upstairs,
into it.
yeah.
But no, we were at your mom and dad's.
Oh, my mom and dad's.
In the basement.
Yeah, I was, yes.
And you wanted me to do something for you because Wagner had DATs and ADATs. And Andy goes, man, I'm cut between the 1/4 inch stuff and I want to do digital. And you had the digital. And you're like, you got to come see this. Just come over. So your mom and dad had me we came in and we got down the basement. I think Dan was there that day maybe too. And you're like, check this out, how this is all going. So at Wagner's studio, I would go back and I'm like, you know, we got this board, but no one's coming there. I'm like, Andy's opening up a whole new thing of having everything at the fingertips. This is before he got married and moved into his house, you know.
Before Pro Tools.
Yeah.
Before
and we
computer.
were just going to get into Nuendo at Wagner's with Ray York. Mm-hmm. And this is 2000. Yeah. 2001. Mm-hmm. And so Andy happened to be at the advent of tape finishing to digital tape to going to full-on computer Pro Tools, which is how it all layered out throughout the years. And his thing back then was, I want to collect old mics, I want to get old tape reels, I want to get everything I can to bring into the digital world and combine some of it. You know, I remember you looking at 1/4 inch of mine. Mm-hmm. I had a Tascam or something at one time.
Well, I ended up with Mark Farner's 8-track, remember? I got it from Records and Tapes Galore.
Yeah, okay.
And it was sitting in the back, and it was this Otari 8-track half-inch machine. Well, 8-track meaning you could record 8 things, you know. Sure. And Bill, right? Bill, yeah, Bill. It was funny. It was around Christmas time, and I didn't know anything about these things. And he's just like, I want, 700. It's like it used to belong to Mark Farner, and I'm like, I don't know. I don't even know if this thing works, dude. It's like I can't spring $700. I'm like, I'll tell you what. I'll give you $250. And he's like, no, I can't take it. I can't. I'm like, okay, well, that's about. I just didn't know anything about it, whether it worked or not. But I'm like, I can take $250. So my wife and I are going to the car, and we walk out, and Bill flags us down. Okay, I'll take $250. So I'm like, sweet. And I'm so mad. I still don't have that machine because it was such a great sounding machine, and I literally learned like how to make records on that 8-track reel-to-reel. It was such it was a good sound.
That was probably what you were showing me.
The American Underdog record that I made in 2011 was all done on that machine. A lot of Brett's record was done on that machine. So what I would do is I would record as much as I could on tape, and then I would transfer it into the computer, and then we'd do the rest in the computer. You know what I mean? In Pro Tools. So it was so half and half. And
what did you do with this machine?
I sold it because I ended up getting a bigger tape machine. I don't have a big studio. No, when I say I have a small studio, I mean it's a legit shoebox. So I didn't have room for 2 big tape machines. I ended up getting a 16-track 1-inch machine.
Yeah.
I don't even have that anymore. I'm just but I have tons of at this point though, like my racks of gear are like, I have 8 microphone preamps that like were used in Stax, like that style microphone, not from Stax exactly, but the company that made the consoles for Stax recording in Memphis. I have 8 channels of that, and I have a couple Neve style mic preamps, which are very British sounding, and a couple Universal Audio things, which is like Bill Putnam out in California tube American sounding things. So there's all these different colors now and all this outboard gear. So if you think about it like a painter, you know, it's like whatever microphone I choose and whatever mic preamp I choose, I can decide the texture of whatever we're recording. And that's when you get into the art of it. Now this is that. Now we're talking 20 years later now. I mean, this is stuff where I started learning at, you know, on records like for Brett Mitchell and for Mandy Lane and stuff. And I'm still learning. It's never ending thing. But I think that's why I love it so much, is because I'm never going to know it all.
There's a cool part about Andy too that comes into play here that he'll remember as soon as I start talking about it. But during that time period at his mom's, between then and moving to his house, he was like, "We need to build home studios, man." He's just telling me, he's like, "We got this. You know what the hell you're doing over there. Do this here. We're gonna figure this out." So I started doing some of my record that Jeff Yance was recording.
That's right.
My second record onto this old, it's called Layla, it's an old digital thing. And Andy had to take those and hear what he recorded and clean it up or place it and mix it. And then he showed me what we were bringing in. And he goes, "You get Pro Tools at your house. I'll have Pro Tools." Our agreement was organic music. We're making it as organic as we can. Bring in tape, bring in anything. Let's get the drums and bass on tape, and we'll go right to digital. Since then, we've obviously grown a lot since then, and so has the digital world. But we had this whole thing going where Andy was laying out the whole picture of the scene. I mean, it took me years to even get to a ballpark of where I can record. Like, I really embraced it over the COVID time because I had time. But Andy just ran with that ball, so it was like, wow, we got this area where you can record organic music. We're not trying to make it sound processed like the dance shit that we'd heard on the radios and all that stuff.
Especially around 2000 when it was like that was...
Him and I are like Tom Petty, Black Crowes, Fish. There was a bunch of bands that we were like, that sounds organic. And Andy had the mindset to see how the vision came together. And with Wagner closing, it left Andy wide open to be the only guy in the
I was in ahead of the game for sure.
Yeah.
And that's why, you know, we were talking as you were walking through the thing. You know, I feel like that's... If the White Stripes came out now, I don't think people would get it. But at that time, you know, with boy bands and all that really manufactured pop music becoming front and center, because remember through the 90s, it was bands. Bands were still the kings. There was always pop music. But at that time, it really became about pop stars, very processed music. And I'm not slamming that. But then you had this complete opposite White Stripes, blues, rock, guitar.
In your face.
And it was the exact opposite of everything that was going on. And that's why I feel like it connected with people. It connected with me instantly.
Well, right.
Yeah. It was kind of like the smack in the face of Nirvana coming out of hair bands.
Right. Exactly the same thing. Yeah. And then you know, I was in bands, you know, around that time in Detroit. And it was crazy because you play a show with a band one night and then they're signed the next day, you know, to Universal. The Sights got signed and the Greenhorns got signed, and Brendan ended up getting a deal with V2 because of Jack White. And it was just, everybody was, you know, but I was far enough away from it, you know, in Bay City that we were just, you know, and I think I was kind of done. The Haskels had kind of fizzled out by then. So we were just a little bit done before all that hit. But either way, it was just cool to be around that. Oh, sure. And to see it happening and to see, like, you know, you hadn't seen in a Detroit rock and roll explosion, like a magnifying glass hit like that since, like, you know, the Grandy Ballroom days.
Oh,
right.
You know what I mean? Like Iggy and MC5 and stuff like that. So it's like, to see Detroit get the spotlight like that was cool. And then right before that, it was the Verve Pipe, you know, in the late 90s. So we still had, I remember seeing them in bars at when I was in golf pro management at Ferris State at the Alibi, sneaking in to watch the Verve Pipe play. You know,
it's funny. RCA Records seemed to sweep through here in Ohio at the same time. There was a bunch that once they grabbed the Verve Pipe, they wanted to make a Midwest sweep, and once White Stripes made it, Virgin and all that, we're looking at Detroit and Ohio and Midwest sweeping, and they give us the whole feel. But yeah, man, that whole Verve Pipe thing was
crazy.
That was so fun for us growing up through it as getting out of high school, and that was what we were seeing.
And it became a reachable goal because Donnie from Saginaw, it's like he's one of us. You know what I mean? It's like, and you meet him and he's Donnie. He's a normal guy, you know? And it's like, and he was really nice early on too, because I had sent him some stuff as I was starting to do stuff in the Haskels, and he was a very good motivator, an encourager of me early on. So I owe him a lot. I mean, obviously we have a great relationship now and we've worked together for years, but he really helped me out big time with confidence early on and teaching me how to, what the good stuff to steal and what the bad stuff to steal is. It's like, so that's been a good relationship too.
People
and you
could
got
hear
to
our
play with
diagram.
him also.
I did.
In the Verve Pipe, right?
Yeah. So that was like after the studio had kind of gone for a while, and it just became my thing. I wasn't in the cover band anymore, and I was doing the studio full time, and Donnie and I had become friends over the years. We had written some songs together and just developed this relationship. Purely, I'm telling you, the basis of our relationship revolves around our love for the Beatles. I mean, we can sit there for like 5 hours and just talk about Beatles stuff. So we had written some songs together and done some stuff. We worked with Glenn Brown, we were talking about earlier. Glenn's great. He's a Lansing guy. And just like I said, learning from Glenn about he's been a great mentor about producing and recording, and Donnie's been a great mentor as far as like production and songwriting and melody and harmony and all that stuff. So I'm just picking all the stuff up from all over the place. So around the time, this is probably like 2009, Donnie calls me and he's like, "Hey man, our bass player just called and we have to go on a 2-week tour of the East Coast tomorrow, and he can't go because he's got some stuff at home that he needs to take care of." And he's like, "Can you do this tour?" And I'm like, well, one, I don't, let me see. And I called all my clients and I did, everybody was cool with pushing my dates back and all that. So that was kind of nice. And I didn't have any children at the time. So my wife was like, "Yeah, go for it." So I'm literally in the van on the way to Philadelphia with an iPhone, learning 20 songs on bass. And at the same time, Donnie's like, "Here's your harmony." I'm like, "Don't be giving me harmonies yet. Let me learn the bass part first." But that's so Donnie. He's just like, "No, you got to sing this low part." It's like, "We'll get to that." So I'm making cheat sheets and stuff. And then I did this 2-week tour with the band. And, a month went by or something like that. And then the bass player left for good. And Donnie called Brian. And Donnie's like, "Should we just get Andy?" And Brian's like, "Yep." And that was the conversation. I was in the band, and he asked me if I wanted to do it. And at that point, they weren't playing a ton. It was like we'd go out every month and a half for like 2 weeks kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So I did that for 4 years. And then we made a couple of the kids' albums, which was great. And then we did one rock album called Underneath, which I didn't finish. My daughter was born in 2013. I tried it for about 4 months being out and about, and I'm just like, I don't want to be gone. So I kind of hung up the touring thing, and then so then I just kind of went back to recording full time. And then years later, Donnie had left at around that time too, because he had been in it a while, and he wanted to start doing his own thing. So Brian reached out to me a couple years ago and asked me to start working on some new music with him. So actually, we're almost done with a new Verve Pipe record. So I'm recording and producing their newest album. So we're about.
But Donnie's not going to be part of this?
Donnie's not in it. No, Donnie left around like 2013 as well. So they don't have a full-time drummer. So we were talking about drums, and we actually hired Ken Coomer, who was the original drummer from Wilco. Because Ken had worked with Brian on one of Brian's solo records, and I had met Ken through a mutual friend, Matt Ross Spang, and I'm like, "Ken's great." So I literally took the files from, we went and did some pre-production, so we had all the songs mapped out in demo form. I took that hard drive to Nashville to Ken's studio, and Ken and I did drums for 4 days on 15 songs, brought the drum tracks back. Brad starts adding bass. Brad Vander Ark's back in the band, Brian's brother, and we've just been kind of putting it together since then. So it's been great. It's been fun. They've been on the road a lot, so it's kind of hit a little bit of a stall here recently, but it's almost done. And that's been, I was laughing because it's like I honestly probably have more say in the band's music than I did when I was actually in the band. It's like I was just the bass player in the band, kind of like a hired gun. But like it was nice that Doug Buttleman, the Verve Pipe's manager, and Brian thought enough of me in my time in the band and my relationship with those guys that they decided to call me and ask me to do the new record. I was very flattered, and it's like this is awesome. I mean, I was going to see them. I was paying $40 to go see them at the Heritage Theater, back in the day, and so it's like now I get to tell them what to do. This is awesome.
A couple weeks ago, I guess it was 2 weeks ago, I went to see Attaboy at the Vault, and I was really impressed with them.
They're great.
And Mike Richards from the stage mentioned you.
Did he? Nice.
He said that, he worked very early on with you, kicking around some ideas. Would he have been talking about the EP that you guys did, or was it before that?
Mike and I have been working together for years. He started Attaboy, I want to say, like that whole concept. That's the beauty about Mike. He's driven, and he's talented to boot. But he started this concept of Attaboy, I want to say probably 2009, 2010. He and I made an EP, which is, he's a drummer too. Mm-hmm. And so he wrote all 5 songs, and then we just put out this EP. Well, now he has a band, obviously, and he's had different, different lineups and stuff, but it's really at its peak right now. The guys he has are amazing.
I thought so too. Yeah. Everybody's a good singer in the band. They have a terrific
Joe
sound.
Balbo is just a stud at everything. He's the bass player. He's got a killer voice and songwriter as well. So the band that they have now, minus they had Jake Voisin in the band, who used to be in the Banana Convention at the time. They did an 8-song record that's on Spotify and stuff, and then they've been doing singles since then. I haven't been doing the singles because they've been working with a producer in Nashville, but I did the 8-song album that came out maybe 3 years ago.
Was that the one with the rhinoceros on it?
Yeah, yes, I did that record. Yep.
All right. Yeah, I've got that T-shirt. Matter of fact.
Yeah, it was fun. Those guys.
You might not know what was the significance about the white rhino.
Oh gosh, I don't think you want to get into that on a podcast. When you get Mike on, which you should get Mike on these days, get it out of him because I want to see him blush through the thing. Okay. So it's a funny story, but it's not family friendly.
All right. So. I'm not sure our podcast is family friendly, is it?
Well, I have to hit the explicit button.
This is it was
only when Fred gets crazy with us.
Okay, that's right.
Yeah, I don't know. They're funny guys, but they're definitely a band, and they get better. They seem to just get better and better and better. The songs get better, the vocals get better. So it's enjoyable to see him.
Yeah,
do
I would
his
think
thing.
the new album that has got to be coming is going to be really strong.
Yeah,
for
I'm sure it will be.
They played quite a few of their new songs.
Yeah.
They were terrific. How about the Legal Matters? You've done 3 albums with them.
Yeah, I forgot about the Legal Matters.
Yeah, they're pretty good too. I especially like the last one. I thought you would almost reminded me of the Haskels a little bit.
Yeah. Well, and it's just my love just kind of goes right back to that, and that's just kind of a pet project. Like Chris Richards, who's from the Detroit area, he's been in bands, for years and years and years. And Keith Klingensmith, same thing. They've been best buddies. Chris had reached out to me because there was this label in LA put out this Elvis Costello tribute record, and Chris got picked to go on it, and then I got picked to go on it after the American Underdog record. So Chris decided to have me record his version of No Action, which is a great song. And we just hit it off instantly and became buddies. And we went out that night, and Keith was singing harmonies on that session because Keith was always this harmony guy. And we went to the Steinhaus or something and just had way too much to drink. And then we're talking about all these records we love, the Zombies, and just it's like we need to start a band. We just need to rip off the Beach Boys and Big Star and the Beatles and Badfinger and just all the bands we love. Let's just make a record like that. And then we woke up hungover the next day, and we're like, "Do we start a band?" You know, and and we held true to it. Like, we decided to make a record, and we're on album 4. We started album 4,
you started to do it.
and I didn't know if we'd ever do another one after the last one. The second one was the biggie, in which we got done with the second album, Conrad, which Conrad was our actual waiter at the Steinhaus,
Yep.
so we named the record after him. And Conrad, he's the best, right? And so we sent it to like 4 labels, just like, whatever, we'll send it out. It's really good. And Omnivore Recordings, and Omnivore does a lot of like re-releases, so they love the record and they wanted to put it out. So Omnivore put out our second record, which was such a dream come true for us. And so yeah, it was we just maintain, we don't play live. We just, now every record we try to do something a little different. Like, we got to kind of mix it up. And it's always been like, Chris writes a song, he brings it in, we record it. I write a song, I bring it in and record it. Keith writes half a song, we try to finish it. But Chris and I are the main primary writers. So this one, we decided, like, we're, you know, like how Brian Wilson in the Smile era was all about like making segments of songs and then trying to piece them together. Good Vibrations is a great example of that, where we recorded it in 6 different studios and there's different movements and stuff. So this record, we decided no one's bringing in a complete song. It's like, Chris, if you have a verse idea, a chorus idea, and we've been taking ideas that we both have and stitching them together to make a song out of it, and completing it together in the room. And it's been a blast. We got 2 done, and I couldn't be more. I'll play it for some stuff for you guys after. I'm in love with it, and it's just such a unique way to create, and it's inspiring. And it's like, we literally set up 2 days of recording without any songs ready to go. We get together that morning, 2-3 hours. We compose the song, and then we record it that weekend.
Okay.
It's so much fun, so much fun, and it's just.
So you're going to play some of that for us? Or?
Yeah, I can play you a couple of those on the thing. Yeah,
that'll be fun.
Yeah, and you know, they're rough mixes and stuff, but they're coming together. So that's just basically, you know, as I've gotten older, I used to do solo music and stuff like that. It's just that stuff. Well, Scott does solo stuff, but Scott has collaborators, which is great. And it's like, I need collaborators. I used to just sit and play every instrument and do it, and it's just I don't have the motivation to do that anymore. I like being around people. I like creating with people, and I think that's why I like producing so much and recording other bands, because I'm you know, you're developing this relationship with another artist, and they're inviting you to be a part of their art, and it's just such a humbling experience. So I probably will never do another Andy Reid record, which is fine, but I'm still going to always make music with my friends. So
when Andy started and the studio's ramping up for Reid recording, I was doing a lot. I was towards my end of my years with the Bay State Times. So he's like, if I pop out a local thing, you do a local story, blah, blah, blah. So we were kind of trying to write underground, kind of like, bring me the artist, I'll record him, he'd throw a story together, and we'll see some promotion. So all these years we're rolling with that ball, and it's cool how we both ended up still apexing, like at one point deciding, you know, this is still working between what's going on, and everybody that come to town that I knew that I was doing a story on, with or without him, would be going, who records in town? I'm like, Andy Reid. So I remember when Amy Petty came to town, and she was picking my brain about him, and next thing you know, that was one of the most brilliant records that came out of Reid recording.
She's a world class writer, person, vocalist. I mean, she's one of those that, like, you know, gets standing ovations at Carnegie Hall when she sings there, kind of thing. And yeah, that was like one of those, like, hey, our music scene already has 4 aces and we get a 5th one, you know. And that's this kid, Chris Ruart. I'll have to play you some stuff too. This kid's from Indianapolis. He moved to Midland. His wife's family from there, and he calls me. He's like, "Hey, I'm into Sturgill Simpson and Jason Isbell," and I'm like, "Well, you called the right guy." And he's got this killer voice and writes. It's just like, man, we seem to attract. That's what I love about this area too. Everybody's so different. It's not like a punk music scene where everybody's a punk band. It's like everybody's got their own thing going on. Yeah. It's so much more interesting because, you can go see
one blues, one country, one rock, one jam, one pop.
It's nuts. It's so crazy, and we're just rich with. I never knew that there would be enough to sustain me making a living doing it, but it's just continued to grow and grow and grow. And, of course it's branched out a little bit. I'll get Lansing acts and I'll get Detroit bands and I'll get, different things. And
that will wrap part 1 with Mr. Andy Reid here in the MMHP and the 989. We'd like to thank him for making his way out to the show to join us and share his history. People from all over the state have come to know Reid Recording as the place to go. Nashville now sends work his way. And it isn't just Andy and his recording abilities and his engineering, but his musician abilities, his singing. And the best part is his humble enthusiasm and total Michigan love has been very important to what he has brought to the scene over the last 20 years, as well as to what's coming to the state in the future. We hope you come back here for part 2 with Andy Reid and Reid Recording here in the MMHP and the 989 for part 2 in 2 weeks. We'll see you then.
On behalf of our hosts, this podcast wouldn't be here without generosity of the Bay City Historical Museum, which hosts the Rock and Roll Legends Hall of Fame. We'd also like to thank all of our guests and especially to the listeners. The MMHP is found at 989.network. or where all podcasts can be found. You can find updated information as well as Dr. J and Sir Fred's Picks of the Week on Facebook. Also on Facebook, check out Mr. Mike's Local Music Live series and Scott's Mid-Mitten 15 from Harvest Canteen Studios, featuring one-on-one interviews with Michigan music artists. You can connect with Scott on the web at scottbakermusic.com, Dr. J at michiganrockandrolllegends.com, Sir Fred at fredrife.com, and Mr. Mike on YouTube as Mr. BT1. That's MRBTEE and the number 1.
On behalf of us hosts, Dr. J, Sir Fred, Mr. Mike, and myself, we'd like to thank